It's not we will be, we are recording it, so it'll be available for download on our on MACHS website. No problem. 5 kids under 10. You've got a busy house there.
So Sherry. Not a meeting. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's just fine. But feel free to chat away in the chat box with any questions or comments that you might have. What about Sean? Here's Karen. Hi. Welcome, Karen.
Hi.
Great to see you.
Good to see you too. Hi, Bev.
Hello.
How's your preparations for tomorrow? You're feeling a little bit more ready, or?
No.
You got a few hours before you leave, right?
That's right. That's right.
Who has to sleep?
That's right. Yeah.
Went on a few trips where we didn't get a lot of sleep before we left.
Yes. And I'm going to my daughter's, and you know, she has everything I need, so.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Very nice.
We've got 2 folks here so far, in addition to the 3 of us. So I was going to give people just a couple more minutes to join in and not miss things, but we won't take long, and we'll just have a nice visit with. That was the objective, was just to visit with whoever came, and an opportunity to have some discussion and also to be able to capture it as a recording, so that those who aren't able to be here with us tonight can watch it at their leisure, wherever they are and whenever they are. So we know that people actually have been doing that. So we'll get started in just a couple minutes. So Sherry, whereabouts are you located? And we had Sean here. So Sean, what age children do you have in your home, your family? Karen, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the chat feature in Zoom. You just click on the chat at the bottom there, the box will open up and you can see what people are typing in.
Okay.
Well, I say along the bottom because it's different places on different devices. Grade 6 and grade 8, those are exciting and fun years. So Sherry, you're driving 40 minutes each way to the private school, I assume. Oh, Springs, I see. Yeah, okay. Cool.
6 days a week.
Wow, that's a lot of time behind the wheel. And Larissa's joining to check you out, Janice.
Oh, she said she wasn't going to be because she had something else on that she has to be at a little bit later. So.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, audiobooks and sermons and things are amazing to take the time while you're driving. Bev is a pro at that.
I listen to audiobooks while I'm hauling firewood or cleaning out the garden or doing all kinds of things. I think I went through 2 books last week.
So where do you find your books?
Most of them in the library.
Like at a public library?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Somebody's got a little one. A little one with an iPhone. Welcome, Larissa.
Zeig mir mal. Zeig mir. Zeig mir mal.
Well, let's get started. I just want to welcome everyone here this evening. Our feature for this evening is grandparents and homeschooling. The session is being recorded, so if you would like to play this for your parents or your family, we would encourage you to do that. It'll be available on the MACHS website, and you can access it there at any time. It'll probably take a few days to get up there, but once we do that, it will be available. I want to introduce our presenters this evening. First of all, for those of you that don't know us, this is Gerald and Bev Hubner. We're from Arborg, Manitoba, and we're the grandparents of 4 homeschoolers, age 14, 12, 8, and 4. And we're glad to be here with you this evening, and we'll tell you a little bit more of our story. Also with us from Brandon is Janice Kyle. Hi, Janice. Great to have you with us. And it's great because Janice also has, I think, her daughter Larissa is on or was on.
I think she just disappeared.
She disappeared, but that's okay. She might
I think
come back.
Trouble connecting the audio.
And so great to have you, as well as Karen Hildebrandt. Karen is from the Morris area and is a homeschool grandma. And Janice, you're heading to go see some of your grandchildren and help them with homeschooling tomorrow. Is that right?
She's muted.
You're muted. We'll get back to it. So what we'd like to do to start is Bev and I'll just, we've got a presentation that we've done a number of times, and what I'm going to do is share my screen, and so that you can all see the PowerPoint presentation that we have here. And if I can just,
You are.
yeah, I know, I'm just trying to get up there. Okay, from the beginning. Okay, so what we'd like to do is just share a little bit with you about some of the things that we've learned from a number of other grandparents, and the things that we'd like to be able to share. What we're going to do is talk about talk a little bit about our family, and so this is our family: 4 grandchildren, 2 children. Our daughter is right in the center there, beside Bev, and our son is on the
He's the big guy.
big
with
guy
the
with
hair.
the beard. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's still single.
We homeschooled both of them all the way through, and then our daughter married the homeschool boy down the road that was in our co-ops all the way growing up. They started homeschooling at the same time as we did, and they have the 4 children. This is an older picture. Probably it looks about 2 years old, might be more. We need to update our family picture, I guess.
So what we'd like to do is just talk a little bit about what's involved, what the grandparents maybe ask about, and some of the questions that they have. So to start, so what is this homeschooling all about? Can my kids actually do this? Is it legal? Does it work? What does the research say, and how will the kids turn out? And what about high school and beyond? So is it legal? Yes, all across Canada. In every province and territory, home education is legal. It's a provincial responsibility in terms of the regulation of home education. And in Manitoba, it has been legal ever since the inception of Manitoba as a province in 1870. And it's outlined and governed by the Manitoba Public Schools Act. So what does that say? It says that basically children need to be in school attendance between the ages of 7 and 18 unless parents are providing an equivalent education. So what do they need to do? They need to do 2 things. First of all, they need to notify the Department of Education that they're going to do this. And then they need to report 2 times per year. Basically, those are like report cards. Make a notification, and then you report twice, January and June. Notification needs to be done within 30 days of starting, and we're in that period right now. So what's not required is approval or permission or testing or home visits. Basically, it's parents that are taking the full responsibility. What about funding? A lot of people ask about that. There is no funding of homeschooling in Manitoba. You don't get any money. Parents take full responsibility for the education of their children. There's no tax breaks or deductions. You still pay your school taxes, so what's with all that? You know, we're doing all the work, we're taking all the responsibility. Well, that's actually the preference, because as soon as there would be money involved, the government, we know from other places, will be trying to tell us, well, this is the way you need to do things now that we're paying for it. So we appreciate the freedom, and we're willing to pay for it. What does the research say? How do we know this works? So there's actually a huge amount of homeschool research done by academic researchers who say all of the stuff about, you know, how do they perform academically, how do they perform in math and English and all of those subjects, and the research basically says it works well. The children perform at or above the level that children in the public school system perform. So academics is not an issue. It's not inherently a problem. And there is no correlation, there's no relationship between the education of parents and the income of parents. So some people think, well, I don't have a PhD, I don't have a teacher's degree, I don't have advanced education. That's not what makes the difference. There is no difference statistically in the research between somebody that has an advanced degree and a teaching degree and somebody that does not. You'd think that if you had lots of money, you could buy all the best computers, and books and things, and that would help. There's no correlation between those incomes. Why does home education work then? And the research summary is actually quite simple. It works because parents love their children, and they're doing this to do the best they can for their children. They're pouring themselves and they're learning. And that's actually what a researcher in England, Dr. Paula Rathermel, found in studying research report after research report and saying, yes, we know it works, but why? Why does it work? And her conclusion was, it was because nobody loves their children more than the parents. Nobody knows the children better than the parents, and nobody can design and deliver an education that is tailored to the child like a parent can. That's why it works. And that's what the research says. So what about socialization? Biggest question, the number one question that's out there. How do we know they're going to turn out okay? Actually, the research says it's not just okay, it's better. There's higher self-esteem than conventional students. They're less concerned about peers when compared with private school students. They're not isolated from social activities with others. They're actually more involved. They have demonstrated leadership ability beyond, and they're better socialized and more mature than their public school counterparts. They don't lag behind conventional students in social development, and they grow into adults who meet or exceed social norms. Now, that's 30 seconds of research of telling you about socialization. If you're looking for evidence to share with your parents, with your family, there is a huge amount of research that you could access at two websites. You can go to the MACHS website and find these, but if you go to homeschool.today or to hslda.ca, there is a compendium of research, Canadian research, that you'll find there that gives you a lot of the information in a real summary form that will help you in assuring your parents that you're not going to destroy their grandchildren. And that's sometimes a concern. So that's a very quick summary of those things. So what about later? What about higher education and career preparation? You can homeschool all the way through. We did it, and many people do. It worked very, very well. And what we find over and over again is that parents can then prepare the transcripts and the portfolios that are needed in order to get into post-secondary universities and colleges. And they do accept homeschool grads. So in Manitoba, there is not a coming out of homeschooling that parents do. There is not a Manitoba education diploma that would be issued. There are requirements that homeschool parents can complete, and then they can issue a diploma and they can issue a transcript. And we find that universities and colleges do accept those, sometimes with some testing and some other things, but they do accept them. And the reason they do it is that homeschool grads do well. They are good students. The universities and colleges actually want them. and they are finding great ways to get in and to participate. So what about higher education and college preparation? Not a worry. It works. You can get in, and it's being done all the time. So what does Scripture say? Well, I just want to say a few words about this in terms of home education. It says, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training instruction of the Lord. And that's what it tells us in Ephesians. And that really is what Christian home education is all about, is bringing them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. The academics, that's the easy part. In Deuteronomy, we have the command that talks about not about teaching in classrooms or teaching in straight rows and desks, but to impress upon our children the commandments that we have on our hearts, to impress them on our children, to talk about them as we live, when we sit at home, when we walk along the road, when we lie down, and when we get up. That's really what the heart of home education from a Christian perspective is about. So what about us as grandparents? Well, I think Joel chapter 1, verse 2 and 3 speaks to us. It says, hear this, you elders. Listen, all you who are living in the land. Has anything like this ever happened in your days or in the days of your forefathers? Tell it to your children. Let your children tell it to their children and their children to the next generation. We have an opportunity to be able to share a legacy, to be able to talk about the things that maybe we didn't live through, but we heard that others did. My brother lived through polio and had polio, and my parents dealt with the quarantine at that time. And we were able to share that with our grandchildren in terms of some of the things that they went through and that happened in their lives, and the way that God was with them, and was with and will be with us during these times. And I think that's what we are commanded as grandparents to do. So who is responsible for the education of children? The Bible doesn't say it's schools. The Bible doesn't say it's the church. It says parents. And grandparents, I think their role is to encourage and to support what parents are doing. So how can we help our children raise godly children in this mixed up world? Well, it is a mixed up world. A recent study by Barna Research said that 60 to 80% of evangelical youth leave the faith by the time they're 20. That's terrible. That's really scary. But we know that the research also said that 80% of homeschool youth stay in the faith into their 20s. That, I don't think we need to stand up and say we're so much better, but I think that there is research here that points to something that has promise and hope. Number one thing that we need to do is to pray for our grandchildren, to pray for our children, and to be able to support them through that. How do children benefit from grandparents' involvement in the homeschool experience? Well, I think that we can be part of the positive socialization with elders. I think that, I'm not sure that I feel like a hero, but I think truly our grandchildren need heroes to emulate, and we can be part of that. I think they need adults who value and love them. I think that we can share a wealth of personal stories, sometimes made up ones, and family history. And I think that we can provide access to educational items that maybe otherwise couldn't afford. Maybe we can help. How did children benefit from grandparents' involvement in the homeschool experience? First of all, I think we can share wisdom that can only come from a lifetime of experience. We've done things and been places and experienced things that we can share. And I think that we can provide information, knowledge, and skills from our field of expertise.
So what can grandparents do? Here are some ideas. You can get yourself educated. So read books, go online, research homeschooling from a Christian perspective so that you can be informed and understand what your children have chosen. Look out for items that can help them, can add to the subject they're studying. If you can attend field trips and outings, that would help as well. There's opportunity for you actually to step in and help them teach. So if you have an expertise, this is where you should be stepping in. Do you know a foreign language that you could teach your grandchildren? art, keyboarding, writing, sewing, music, woodworking, computers, cooking, sports. Anything that you have a real skill in is something that you can pass on to your grandchildren. We do quite a bit with our grandchildren, most wilderness and nature study, because we live in the country and they live in town. So our kids come out and they do things like build fires and make bow and arrows and play in the forest, build forts. We help them with their survival skills. Gerald hands out jackknives so that they can do some carving. It's a little bit different than what mom usually does in a homeschool. The other thing that is really important is that kids get read to. Yes, mom reads to them. Our daughter reads to our grandchildren quite often, but kids love to hear books. So think about books that you could share with your grandchildren. Start a chapter book and read to them each time you see them. Or if you live farther away, you could record it, or you could do it through a Zoom call. I have a friend, they live far away from their grandchildren, and her husband reads a bedtime story through electronic Zoom type call every night to their grandsons. And they so look forward to it. And what they've done is they've actually bought a copy of each book so that the child can look at the pictures while you're reading it to them. But it's really important to read, or actually to encourage them by, what I do for my granddaughter is she loves to read, and Diane doesn't have time to check out every book that she wants to read. So I actually proofread books for her because I love to read as well. And so I will give her advice and say, yes, this one's good. No, that one I wouldn't give her to her until she's older, and that kind of thing. What about buying things? We all love to buy things for our grandchildren, but we could actually take that money and spend it on things that they could actually use in their homeschooling. So things that maybe because the family is usually a one-income family, they can't afford. Things like globes, atlases, wall maps, encyclopedias. I love them, but my daughter doesn't, so she hasn't taken my encyclopedia. They think they can get everything on the internet, which is probably true. But there's things like audiobooks. Our grandchildren love the Brinkman brothers. And so those are the kind of things I would buy for gifts for the birthdays and Christmas. But if there's other things like scientific materials, magnifying glass, butterfly nets. We bought butterfly nets this summer, and the kids spent most of the summer using them to catch minnows. We have a ditch in the front of our property that they love to play in. But things like books and curriculum and supplement materials, those are the kinds of things that they would really appreciate, but do it in consultation with your children. What can you do? Show an interest in what they're learning. Ask about it. Ask to see what their work looks like, but be very careful that you're not evaluating, that you're not criticizing. This can happen and cause a tension between you and your daughter or son if you try and interfere with it. But if you encourage and admire and show interest in their activities, that's the best thing you can do. Take your grandchildren to places of employment. We're retired, so we don't have that. But we took our grandchildren to the zoo the other day, what was that, last month? And brought along our son, who was on holidays at the time, and we had a great time just exploring the zoo with them together. So things like field trips. Sometimes mom is just tired and needs a break. And that's when you can take them and do something educational and give her a break as well.
For those of you that are wondering what I'm holding up on this picture, that is a deer that my grandchildren and I found, and his name is Mr. Bones. And it was part of our fun of just learning something about skeletons and animals and that kind of thing. Some people are sometimes grossed out by it, but the kids were quite intrigued by Mr. Bones, and he's still hanging around.
So one option is to develop a new hobby together. Maybe your grandchild has an interest in something and you can learn about it together. You could offer to be the driver if you're close enough for lessons. When we plan to go visit our daughter, she lives 2 hours away from us, so we don't go that often, but we try and go once a week. We try and plan it on a day where we can take their daughter who takes swimming lessons in Winnipeg for synchro 3 times a week, so that we would try and go home and drop her off swimming so that they would have one less driving opportunity. If you volunteer somewhere, take the kids there to see what you do. And the other thing too is, especially if they have little ones, if they have a baby, if they have a toddler, offer to do housework. I have done this for my daughter through all her different pregnancies. She had some very difficult pregnancies. I would go there once a week. I would do all the laundry, clean the kitchen, and prep a couple of meals for the rest of the week. This is something that I do without asking. Some people have a different relationship with their daughters or their sons, or their daughter-in-laws. So you have to make sure that they don't feel inadequate because you're stepping in. But they really appreciate it.
Overall, I think that there's opportunities to spend time, whether that's doing crafts, whether that's outings, whether that's hiking, doing a number of different things. There's nothing that can replace the time. And even if it's a distance, to be able to spend time doing things together over the course of the times when we weren't able to get together as much as we'd like, we did a daily joke time on Zoom. And we just spent time. We had a theme each night, so we tell elephant jokes or chicken jokes or bear jokes, all sorts of different kinds of things, but just to spend time together and sometimes just to laugh. Homeschooling has challenges. It's important to recognize those. Don't be surprised when your children are discouraged in their home education, because it's not easy. Support is needed. And we find over and over again that the 2 places where support is the most important and should be coming from are often the places where it doesn't, and that's family and church. And I would just encourage you as family to support your children in what you're doing. It costs time and money. That's a reality, but it's something that is worth it. It needs to be customized and flexible, so you'll talk to other grandparents and find out that their kids' homeschooling looks very different from yours. And that's because what works for one family doesn't necessarily work for others. Our challenge as grandparents is how to be an encouragement to parents and students versus a backseat driver or a critic. And that's really our assignment. And I just want to end this part of it by saying that really what we want doing is unquestionably and constantly and fervently praying for our children. And Jeremiah chapter 29, it says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you and to give you hope in a future." And that's really the prayer that we want to have for our grandchildren. So that's what we wanted to share. And I'm going to ask Karen to go next. And just to share a little bit of her story with you, and I'll pin her video so that. And Karen, if you can unmute yourself, there you are. So welcome here, Karen, and coming to us from Morris, Manitoba, or that area.
Okay, well, I just as a bit of an introduction, my husband and I have 4 children, and I'll just tell you where they're at now. Our oldest daughter, Tara-Lee, she is. They're expecting their 5th child. Their oldest is 6, so lots of little ones. And they started homeschooling last year. And it was a struggle for them to decide, because my daughter's husband, our son-in-law, had seen some really negative homeschooling examples. And he was like, our kids are absolutely not going to be homeschooled. And so I quietly prayed that their minds would be changed, or that his mind would be changed, and that they would homeschool. And turns out he came on board, and I think they're doing a beautiful job. And the father is extremely supportive with the children. It's great. So they are 25 hours away, which I wish they were 2 hours away. I'm very jealous hearing of your involvement with your grandkids. I would love to have grandkids close, but we are doing a lot of the things that Gerald suggested. And so Derek is next. He is taking his apprenticeship for John Deere, which has been his life's dream. So he lives at home. He's been away doing construction for a year. He's gone away to school for a year. So he's been kind of back and forth. And so he's doing, yeah, his John Deere apprenticeship and working at the John Deere dealership close to Winkler. And then our son Nathan is married to a nurse, and he started his own roofing company when he was 19. He is out at Swift Current and very involved in the church there. And then our youngest, our son Jason, is getting married on October 10th, pretty soon. And he is, he's a career missionary. So he has been in Turkey for the last 2.5 years and plans to go back. Their mission suggests they are married for a year before they go back to their field. So they plan to go back to the Middle East to continue their mission work. I basically homeschooled all the way through our 4 children. Jason did take his last year at Rosenhart School, and that had been a bit of a struggle for me to just say go for it, but it turned into a really, really positive experience for him. He said that because he had been homeschooled the rest of the time, he was able to like not be affected by the peer pressure and stuff, and he really looked out for the underdog wherever he was. He was always looking for kids that weren't fitting in, or always looking to see who he could encourage. And that is a real gift of his. And he used it very powerfully in his grade 12 year, and even got an award for the way he treated other people, which was, you know, a reward for us as parents. And he just said he would have never gotten that award if he hadn't been homeschooled, because he said he would have probably, you know, been affected by the peer pressure and wouldn't have had the courage to take that role at school. I'm a public school teacher. I teach at a Hutterite colony, and part of me wishes that every single child could be homeschooled, but I know that isn't feasible. It is impossible, but it was a very positive experience for us. And I saw, you know, Sean, you know, wondering if you can, you know, if you're equipped to teach successfully into the high school years. And, you know, it depends on you. Some parents would not be. If they're not willing to put in the time and effort, then no. If you're willing to put in the time and effort, it can be just an incredibly rewarding experience, which my husband and I would say it certainly was. I would say the most important piece of furniture for homeschooling is a couch. We did most of our homeschooling on the couch. And as grandparents, it seems we're on the couch a lot too, reading to our kids and playing games and wrestling or whatever. You know, the couch is kind of the key piece of furniture, I would say. And the word that comes to me first when I think of homeschooling is probably respect. The children need to respect their parents. Parents need to respect their children. And I'd really like to emphasize that children need to respect their siblings. The notion that siblings just fight, I think, is a worldly notion. I don't think that it's necessary to just assume that children fight. Our children were 5.5 years apart from youngest to oldest. And each of them had extremely different personalities, but we never thought it was okay for them to just be disrespectful to each other or fight. And I don't think that just has to be something that parents accept. I really appreciated what Gerald and Bev, like all the examples they gave of how grandparents can influence their grandchildren. I think they had a fantastic list there. I know I had written down a lot of things as well. One thing that was very important for us is we prayed very hard that each of our children would find a mentor. It's great being your child's teacher, but you want other input from other adults in their lives. And I prayed very hard that God would provide a mentor for each one of our children. And our kids are all now in their 20s. And God certainly answered that prayer. Each of them still connects with their mentor, even though they're like 1,000 miles away or whatever in Turkey. Those mentors have continued to be very special people to my children. And I think that's that's been huge. Those have been maybe what Gerald mentioned, like those have been the heroes to them, and those have been people, adults that have been willing to put into our children's lives. One of the most fantastic things about homeschooling is you can let kids go at their own pace. I had taught public school before I had children, and so it was very difficult for me that our one son didn't read till he was 10. It was very embarrassing. But I read, you know, Raymond and Dorothy Moore's Better Late Than Early, and I went with it. I said, yeah, you know what? I'm not going to force him to read. And I'm so glad I took their advice from that book, Better Late Than Early. And our son became a fantastic reader and has read ever since he was 10. He all of a sudden, when he was 10, he all of a sudden read the whole, I'm not going to think of it now, Hardy Boys, the whole Hardy Boy, like 40 books or something. And so to just allow children to develop at their own pace. And I think you as a grandparent can be such a support in that you're not trying to press your grandchildren into a certain mold. Every homeschool will look different. Every family dynamic is different. And just allow children to be who God has created them to be. What we experienced was that, you know, we put an awful lot of effort into our children till grade, 5 or 6, and then kind of almost on their own, they just started doing a lot of their schoolwork on their own. And I became much more of a support than sitting beside them on the couch type of teacher. And that was beautiful too. Each of our children took a very different interest in things. And because of homeschooling, they were allowed to pursue interests that were very different from each other. And I think that was such a neat outcome of homeschooling. Our children also did distance learning through Altona Adult Ed and a few university courses online. And that was also good for them. Our son got the highest mark, I think, in physics, in grade 12 physics. So that was kind of neat. I think if you are, as a parent and especially as a grandparent, if you're willing to be involved in your children's lives and are willing to take the time and the effort, you can have an extremely positive experience homeschooling and supporting your children. And I really like what Bev emphasized, that you're not in the driver's seat as a grandparent. You have to let your children do what they believe is that they want to do. And I did ask my daughter, I said, what would you say was a strength in how we worked? And she just, what should the grandparents' role be? And she wrote, supporting your children and being willing to help while giving them space to do their own thing. And then she just said, you've done it beautifully. And I thought, oh, that's a real compliment, that we very much don't want to be, interfering. We want to be a support, just like Gerald and Bev were really saying. You're the support. You are not there to make all the decisions and do that. You are there for support. And it's been neat being able to help them financially with some things. That's been very rewarding. And we do a lot of FaceTiming with the kids. We play little games with our grandkids, and we do a lot of reading. And as soon as they see my face on FaceTime, they already start calling out which books we should read together. And I think that's really neat. So yes, I believe homeschooling has been extremely rewarding, and it is especially rewarding seeing our children and our sons and their wives have said they also are interested in homeschooling. So that has been a real encouragement. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Really appreciate your sharing, and we will have a question time shortly. So we'll. I'm just trying to switch things around here. While I'm doing that, Janice Kyle will go over to you. And welcome here. Janice comes from from Brandon. And some of you heard Larissa McDonald share. She's been on a couple of the calls. Janice is Larissa's mom. So welcome here. And we're looking forward to you sharing about your experience and your advice and your recommendations as a homeschool grandma.
Okay. Well, thank you, Gerald and Bev, and thank you also, Karen. I'm going to reiterate several of the points you've already made because they're part of my experience as well. So I'll just tell you a little bit about myself and our family. My husband Glenn and I are retired, and we've lived in Brandon for the past 7 years. For 23 years before that, we lived in Nipawa. Glenn was a teacher for 13 years, and then a social worker in the school division, working in all the schools. I was a nurse. I've also managed a children's educational book and toy store, worked in the schools as a TA and school division as a secretarial sub, proofed at a local newspaper, and I was the church secretary for 7 years. All of those jobs gave me the freedom to be at home with our girls as they were growing up, the job that I considered to be most important. I was able to take positions only when I was free to do so. We have 2 daughters, and both of them attended public school. They were not homeschooled. They are both married, and they have children. So as Gerald mentioned, Larissa is our elder daughter, and she lives 45 miles away from us, or 45 minutes away from us on a farm, and she has 8 children. They are aged 3, 5, 7, 10, 12, almost 13, 15, 16, and 18. There are 6 boys and 2 girls. She's currently homeschooling 6 of them, and I say only 6 because the 3-year-old is there all the time and constantly learning, but she's not formally homeschooling him. And the 18-year-old has just graduated this past spring from high school, homeschool high school. And unfortunately, because of COVID, was not able to have his graduation at the MACHS conference. But that was a very important time for all of us, and we were able to celebrate when some of the COVID restrictions were lifted. We were able to celebrate as a family his graduation. He is currently living with us while he attends H&Co hair school to become a barber. So we're quite excited to be able to have him here and continue to be a part of his life in this way, and as he experiences adulthood in a different way. Our younger daughter, Brandy, lives in Brampton, Ontario. She has 2 children, ages 9 and 7, a boy and a girl, and she too is homeschooling both of her children. Both of our daughters have chosen to homeschool for different underlying reasons. For Larissa, homeschooling was always her chosen way to educate her children, even before marrying. It was her natural bent, her calling, long before she had children. For Brandy, homeschooling became the chosen option for educating her children due to the inaccessibility of a Christian school setting that she and her husband desired for their children. The Ontario school curriculum was not one they wanted their children to participate in, and certainly not the sex education indoctrination that occurs in the Ontario schools. Both wanted their kids to have a strong Christian education, and without them being in a Christian school, you pretty much have to provide that yourselves. And so that was important enough for them both to make that choice to homeschool their children. I'm constantly in awe of the amazing job that both of them are doing in schooling their kids. The amount of work that it takes for research and preparation and printing off and correcting and recording and spending time with each child at their very own level is often the same as any other teacher who teaches in public school, and they're doing it for multiple grade levels. It's a huge but rewarding job, as most every teacher will tell you. And I'm also very aware that homeschooling requires the teacher mom. And I say mom, there are a lot of dads who participate a great deal in homeschooling. There are some dads who do the bulk of the homeschooling. So as I say mom, I don't mean to discredit the dads who are very involved in the homeschooling, but often they are out working, and so they're not doing the day-to-day schooling. So homeschooling requires the teacher mom to be with those same children 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that's no small task. I've often said, I think I would have killed them if I had stayed home and homeschooled. I'm grateful for the opportunity that my kids had to be in school settings that were, although not exactly as we would have wanted them, they were pretty good compared to some. But I really am grateful for my grandchildren being able to be homeschooled and receive the education that they're receiving at home. And as I watch my young women pour themselves into educating their children well so that they can go out into the world equipped with everything they need academically, physically, emotionally, and socially, I'm very proud of what they do and how they're doing it. Our daughters' choices to homeschool their children have not deprived their children. We're supportive of these choices, and we see them as well thought out choices to protect and educate their children. However, if we weren't supportive, if we didn't agree with what they were doing, we would still need to recognize, as Karen has said, that our children have the right, as we did, to raise their children as they think best. And we would still be called to pray for and to encourage our grandchildren in positive ways. Both of our daughters have worked tirelessly, sometimes very tired, at finding the best curriculums for their children, taking into account their various learning styles, strengths, and challenges, reviewing and changing the curriculum as needed. Probably one of the major concerns raised regarding homeschooling, and Gerald brought this up, is the aspect of socialization. A fear that because the children are not with their peers during the day, they won't be well socialized. We haven't seen that fear realized in any of our 10 grandchildren. They are, in fact, all extremely social. They interact well with their various personalities with their peers. So they all do that differently because they're very different people, but they all interact well. And they're extremely comfortable communicating with adults. They participate in sports, soccer, softball, hockey, archery, basketball, swimming, 4-H, they do public speaking. In fact, one of our grandsons has been to Toronto to speak publicly as a result of his involvement with 4-H. They're involved in youth group and summer camps and Sunday school and weekend church activities, leadership training and homeschool group activities. They go to the library, they take field trips, they sing and participate in church worship. One of our grandchildren is currently going to ACC at the age of 16 and taking ASL classes with adults before graduating high school. Another can operate any piece of farm equipment you put them on. A couple of them have their own businesses, one raising pigs and one raising chickens, and they've been doing that since the age of 8. We've been asked to share tonight how we can support our homeschooling children, grandchildren. And here are some ideas. Many of them Gerald and Bev and Karen have mentioned, but I'm going to go ahead and mention them within the context of what I've experienced. Encourage them. Ask questions. Ask the children what they learned today or did today in school. And when they say nothing, don't panic. Public school kids say the same thing. Some kids are really hard to get that information out of. What did you do today? Nothing. Well, okay. Is there kind of nothing? That's okay. Ask to see their work and their year-end report cards and be excited about them. Be available to listen to their stories or poems and have them read to you. For 2 reasons. One, it gives the parent a break, and it gives an exciting opportunity for the child to share with someone other than their teacher, mom. We have had our kids call over Skype to read their poem and then explain what they think it means, or to show the latest picture that they've drawn, or share their excitement over an experiment that they've done. I'm currently reading with the 7-year-old who lives in Ontario. Mom was pretty frustrated as she was balking at sitting down and reading with her. So Brandy called and asked if we could Zoom read together. So she sent me a PDF copy of her reader, and I've been able to follow along with her as she reads, making corrections as needed and encouraging her. And in a very short period of time, there's been an improvement in her reading, and it gives her a desire to do more reading. And it's been fun and rewarding for both of us, and it builds our relationship too. Technology is amazing. Learn how to use it with your grands. It just opens up doors, particularly where they live in other areas of the country or other countries. Remember that baking involves math and science and fractions, and planting a garden is science. Playing outside is gym. Our one daughter's mother-in-law lives on the same farm as they do in her own home, and she takes the little ones when mom's teaching the older ones, but she also teaches the middles and the littles to bake, and they help her in the garden, so they learn how to plant a garden and take care of it and harvest it. She too, in her own way, is homeschooling kids or helping with homeschooling the kids, and they get to spend invaluable time with that grandma. they will start slaughtering chickens tomorrow, according to Larissa today, she tells me. So show up for special events, ball games, 4-H achievement, swimming lessons. Those things are all as important as the school activities were if they were in public school. And it just means so much to those kids to see grandma and grandpa sitting in the audience. So be there for them as much as you possibly can. As Karen has said, fold a load of laundry, and I think Bev mentioned it too, fold a load of laundry, clean a pantry, wash dishes. I just pitch in and do those things because they're my daughters, and we often keep our house in much the same way in terms of where we put stuff or whatever. So I just pitch in and do it. I think their guys were kind of shocked when I would just come in and start doing dishes or come in and rearrange her pantry or whatever. But if it's your daughter-in-law, you might not feel comfortable doing that. So you might want to ask if there's something you could do to lighten her load. Ask permission before you do something. Send a pot of soup or some baking. Those kids are always hungry and they need to be fed, even when schooling's taking place, and especially lunches after doing school all morning. Larissa says Beth will often send over a pot of soup at noon, and that just blesses her so much to have that load taken off. Currently, her kids cook most of the meals because Larissa's busy schooling 6 different levels of school. And Janessa, her oldest daughter, who is now 16, from the age of between 10 and 12, could make a meal, a hot meal, bath the rest of the small children, and put them to bed and have them actually go to sleep. Those are ordinary skills, but they're often not taught in the same way in a non-homeschooling situation. And I just really admire all of the skills these kids have as a result of their homeschooling situation. I think one of the more important things that we've been able to do to support our daughter, specifically in regards to homeschooling, is that in supporting her and her husband is they can attend the MACHS conference every year. That's the Manitoba Association of Christian Homeschoolers. And it's a provincial conference that occurs every year. And so we have taken the children every year for that weekend, which enables Larissa and Neil to go together, to meet with other homeschool parents, to look at available curriculums and purchase supplies for the next school year. They get to hear encouraging speakers and learn about new or old ideas that can help them in their homeschooling. It also gives them a weekend away together and time to share regarding their children's education. Because often, as I said before, the men are less involved. And so this is a time for them to both be involved in choosing what curriculum they might use or what they for their kids. And during that time, we get to have the kids for a weekend. Generally, my husband Glenn plays with the kids. We have a swim spa. They're usually out there even in the dead of winter, a couple of hours, and on a nice afternoon in the swim spa. He will take them for walks and teach them what different songs the birds sing, all of that kind of thing. I'm generally making meals. I don't know how Larissa does it. All I do is make meal and then a snack, and then a meal and then a snack, and then a meal and then a snack. And it's time for bed and I'm exhausted. But those are some really fun times. And we've had some absolutely marvelous times with our grandchildren and had the opportunity to get to know them. And as Gerald and Bev shared, then we share our stuff with them, who we are and what we believe. And we don't run our house exactly the same as our daughters. So our kids learn how to adapt to different situations, and that at Grandma and Grandpa's, you do it this way, or you don't jump on the couch at Grandma and Grandpa's at home, but you don't jump on Grandma and Grandpa's couch. And so those little things can make a big difference, and they can also be a part of their homeschooling. The beauty of homeschooling is the freedom to change your schedule. And that being said, you can support your homeschool family by not interrupting their scheduled school time if possible. It can be really hard to refocus kids who've gone AWOL, and they will disappear really quickly. So I try to respect the time that I know Larissa has set aside or Brandy has set aside for schooling the kids in the morning, and not call them or whatever. I don't always succeed, but I do try to do that and honor their school time as being valid time that she has set aside specifically for teaching her kids. The freedom to change the schedule has also allowed us to take 2 trips to Ontario with the Manitoba grandchildren to spend a week with their cousins. Those trips were learning and fun trips for all of us. We drove, so we were 3 days on the road. We took homeschool lessons with us to be done in the car each day. We planned subway and bus rides, a trip to the Royal Ontario Museum, walks, swimming, playtime with auntie and uncle and the cousins. The first trip, we took the 2 oldest children, and the second trip was with the next 3. And I'm kind of hoping maybe that the next 3 don't realize yet what they've missed because I don't know if I've got the energy for another 3-day trip to Ontario and a week there and 3 days back. But we'll see what COVID holds. We'll wait and see what opens up. But the learning opportunities in that were many, and the memories were amazing. You don't have to travel to Ontario, however, to take a walk in the bush and make it a learning opportunity with grandma and grandpa. As mentioned before, buying educational books and toys for children's birthdays or Christmas, or just because you know it's something that's needed. We've given books that were supplemental to the curriculum. Our daughter called and said, I'd like to order a bunch of books. Would you like to give some of them for Christmas or birthdays? And so we've said, yeah, we'll just contribute to that. You choose the ones you need and we'll pay for them. That would be awesome because I don't have to go shopping for a gift either. And it gives them what they need and what they can really use. We've also we bought fun toys for the kids, of course, but we also try to buy educational toys and games too, games that they use or toys that they can use over and over again that call for creativity and imagination. Homeschooling is sacrificial on the part of the parents, and often in particular on the part of the mom. It's a full-time job, as much for the homeschool mom as it is for any mom that works outside of the home. The difference is that it's 24/7. The breaks are few. So encourage your homeschoolers and if possible, give mom a break for a few hours, even if it's just to shop without the kiddos. Encourage them with your words and your attitude towards homeschooling. If you have concerns, it's fair to express them as concerns, but then be prepared to listen to the answers and really hear on what's on the heart of your homeschooling parents and why they're doing what they're doing. The reality is that most homeschool kids are more than adequately prepared for the world and for their education, and they do well in the fields that they choose. I'm currently watching my 18-year-old grandson taking responsibility for his own studying, schedule, etc. And he's doing a great job. He makes his own lunches. He cleans his room, sort of, although we do joke about whether he looked at the bathroom through his eyes or grandma's eyes. I'll send him back down and say, did you look at that through grandma's eyes? No. And he'll go back down again. His mom says that it's what you hope will happen, but you aren't sure it will while you're watching them grow. So she finds that it's good to hear that he's doing so well. I am really proud of these children and how amazing and articulate and knowledgeable they are. And I'm grateful and proud of their mothers and supportive fathers who are doing such a fantastic job of educating them. So don't be afraid of homeschooling. It is a lot of work, but boy, those rewards are pretty special. Thank you, Gerald and Bev.
Thank you, Janice. We really appreciate your taking the time and sharing your family with us, and it's really special. So thank you for that. And we're okay. There we go. Video. What we'd like to do now is just to open up the discussion for the questions, and so you can ask your questions either in the chat, questions or comments, either in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself, you can do that. So are there any questions that anybody has about homeschooling as it relates to grandparents and family, and questions that they might have? And I think
Open to any question.
we're open to any questions. So whatever questions you have about home education, just they don't have to be just about grandparents. You can ask away whatever your questions might be. So who'd like to ask a question? I know that we've been able to hear some just super presentations, and I thank Karen and Janice for sharing with us today, because it's been great to have them. Our guests are quiet today. So Charisse or Sherry, I know we have some other experienced people here. If that's, I think that might be Anita McKee that's on there, and I see Larissa's on. If any of you have any comments, feel free to chime in from your experiences as well. One of the things that we remember from our homeschooling, my parents and Bev's parents have both gone to be with the Lord. But one of the things I remember very specifically about my parents was the lessons that they taught of how to kill and process chickens. And when our daughter had a chicken business, and my parents came down, and my dad had been in the poultry business for many years, so had a real expertise in it. And my mom was very particular about
the evisceration process.
Yes, and so the kids were able to get the lessons on not just how to take it out, but also what all these parts were and what they did and how they operated. And my dad could show them those things, and it was a great lesson to be able to share that. And I know Bev's mom was able to share a lot of times about cooking lessons and her love of plants as well. Great to have you join us, Larissa. I know you need to head on, so thanks for calling in. And for us, actually, there was my parents, similar to you, Janice. They took the kids for many years for the MACHS conference and allowed us to participate. So it was great to have that support. I really appreciate your doing that for your daughter and their family.
I don't know if my father would have been very keen on homeschooling. He died when our daughter was in kindergarten, so we hadn't even thought about it by the time he died. But he was very, very, he valued education because he didn't get it. He had to take a GED in order to go on to further education. When he was in his 50s, he went back to school at Red River to get his engineering degree. And he wouldn't understand homeschooling because education was so valuable. I think he might have changed his mind if he had lived long enough to see the results, but.
Thanks, Sherry, for sharing that. If there's no questions.
I just wanted to emphasize a little more. I think it was mentioned, but
go ahead, Karen.
And, like Janice, I know you were saying that it is the mother that does the bulk of it, but I just think of the incredible support my husband was throughout the homeschooling. And I had one woman ask me, should I homeschool if my husband doesn't support it? And I just said no. I said, I think you have to be united on it. I think in order to be successful, you're going to need your husband's support. And I'm sure there are circumstances where you would still go ahead and do it, but I can't fathom that. I think my husband was just like the most amazing support when it came to homeschooling. And I know I came to those conferences by myself all the time, but it was because he was at home looking after the kids so that I could go. We didn't have parents close by. We didn't really have an option of going together. And I can't say enough. And we moved closer to his place of work so that he could be home for every single meal. And piano lessons were important to him. So when he came home for lunch, he would take a child and practice piano with them for 15 minutes. And our daughter won the grade 8 sonatinas section, and the adjudicator said her music sings. And my husband would always say, okay, you've got your timing, you've got your notes, now we're going to make it sing. And that was, he wasn't the teacher. We had a different piano teacher, but that was just a role that he took. And I've just seen the neatest things that fathers have done to support the moms with the homeschooling. And I certainly would want to emphasize that.
I concur with that. I didn't mean to kind of say that the fathers don't play any part, because I think they certainly do. And I think that whether it's actual hands-on in terms of the schooling, or whether it is just simply supporting the fact that this is something that they're choosing to do together as a family, is vitally important, because I see that in both of my girls' situations, where the husbands are extremely supportive of it. There is no, it's not a case of I don't want you to homeschool. It's yes, we're in agreement that this is what we're going to do, and we'll make the sacrifices necessary for that to happen. So yeah.
And my husband always said, I'm the principal and the discipline comes to me. He says, you don't have to deal with discipline. And I've been a public school teacher for 15 years, and wouldn't it be beautiful if I never had to deal with any of the issues in the classroom? So he would call me at his coffee break every 10 o'clock. He'd call, he'd go, so should I speak to anybody? And I'm like, here is your daughter. And he would just have a little chat with her, and he would just say, you know, when I come home at lunch, I want mom to have a very different story of how you've been behaving and helping and whatever. And I just think, yeah, I mean, Janice, you didn't not acknowledge the fathers, but I just thought we could just really emphasize that role that they can be to make the load ever so much easier for the mom.
You want to say? I think this has been a great evening of sharing and encouragement. And Karen and Janice and Bev, thank you. Our numbers here are we've got a number of people that are online, but this is recorded so that people in the next while can watch this and take it in. And I know that this will be a blessing and encouragement to many in the coming days, particularly grandparents that in the coming days will be able to hear these testimonies and these stories and these realities of the experiences that you've had. You know, Janice, I think your experience, your husband being in the public school system and your connection with that, I think is really special. I think it gives a perspective that's really important, and it's you know, I think it's excellent. And Karen, you also were in the public school system, so you know, have that perspective, and it's great to have so many that are online and see so many that are seeing things. I know Charisse, who's actually here from Arborg as well, was sharing about the Skype reading, and they have family in South Africa, so it's particularly special to be able to be reminded of ways to be able to connect with that and for them in other languages, in Afrikaans. So Charisse, thanks for sharing that, and we're looking forward to hearing how you can encourage and connect more with Jan's parents in South Africa, with the kids that way. So that's really exciting, and thanks for those suggestions. Just before we go on, is there any other questions or comments? I just want to give one last opportunity if anybody has any. Karen or Janice, anything else you wanted to share or say?
Well, my daughter would never handle a Zoom meeting every day. That would be way too much for her. So what I've done, I've recorded books, and I've read a lot of books. So I've recorded them, and then they can play them at, you know, when it suits her schedule.
Yep.
So that has worked really well for us, is me recording, and then the kids are all excited they get to watch grandma read a book, and I dress up and try to be in character, and I have lots of fun with it.
Oh, cool. Sounds like a great idea.
I'm kicking myself that I didn't record myself reading all the books that I read to my kids. because then I could have passed them on to my grandchildren.
Why don't we pause and pray together before we end this evening, and just ask for God's blessing on the families that are here, as well as the families that will be watching this in the days to come. Let's pray together. Lord God, I thank you for the opportunity that we have here in Manitoba to be able to choose and direct the education of our children in your way and in your word. Lord, we thank you for that, the reality that that's also the case all across Canada. So the grandparents who have children in other places, that they can also enjoy that freedom and be able to do this as well. And Lord, we just pray that that as that freedom is advancing around the world, that you would enable it in places that right now are restricted. But Lord, I just thank you for this opportunity that we've had to hear about how grandparents can be an encouragement and a support to home education, and the reality that home education is such a blessing and works so well. Lord, I just pray for the families that are here and the families that are going to be watching this, that you would speak to them and through them, that you would give them what they need this day, this week, for what they need to carry out with their children. And we just commit this to you and pray that you would bless the efforts that come out of this and the teaching that happens, that children would be able to come to know you as their Lord and Savior and to love you with all their hearts and mind and soul. We just thank you for this and pray that you would do these things in the name of Jesus, our Savior. Amen. Thank you all for joining us. And as I say, this will be recorded. Our session next week will be on Zoom as well, same time, Tuesday at 7 p.m. And Mike Knox, who's from, I think, McGregor area, will be sharing about teaching the Bible and biblical principles in home education. So he'll be sharing that next week. And then the one after that is about how do you deal with attitudes and motivate your children. So we've got 4 more sessions that are scheduled. After that, we've got a session for homeschool for dads, and the last one is on special needs on the 27th of October. That's as far as we've got scheduled at this point. And we'll have another one probably in November, late November, on notification forms, because that'll be a January project for families, and just a primer and help in completing those. So those are the things that we have planned at this point and looking forward to it. I want to assure you that we are working on plans for a MACHS conference. Both Karen and Janice mentioned that. I don't know quite what it'll look like in the spring of 2021, but we will have an opportunity to hear the great speakers from around Manitoba and around the world, and we'll see how we accomplish that in terms of what it'll look like, but it will happen. We'll make sure that it's not optional. We had to postpone or cancel it last spring, but we're not going to do that again. But it may look different, and we'll get back to you on that. But thank you for coming. And for those that are watching this on the MACHS website, if you have questions, feel free to send us an email at info@matches.ca, and follow us on Facebook. We have 2 Facebook pages, the MACHS and the MACHS discussion group, where you can ask your questions and be able to put those out there regularly and keep up with what's happening around the province. Thank you all for coming, and Janice and Karen and Bev, thank you all, and God bless you, and have a great evening. And Karen, have a great trip and enjoy the time with your grandchildren.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.